The massive war room buzzed with excited chatter as Admiral Vextar spread the holographic maps across the crystal table. The blue light cast eerie shadows on the faces of the Zerathi High Command, their scaled skin gleaming with anticipation. This was going to be easy money. "Gentlemen," Admiral Vextar announced, his voice booming through the chamber, "today we plan the conquest of 17 human worlds. Our intelligence shows these creatures barely know how to leave their home planet." Commander Thale leaned forward, studying the spinning hologram of human space. "Sir, they only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Our species has been traveling the stars for over 3,000 years. "Exactly," the Admiral nodded, his four eyes gleaming. "They're children playing with toys they don't understand. Look at their weapons." He waved his hand and the hologram changed to show human military equipment. Metal projectile weapons, chemical explosives. They still use gunpowder in some regions. The War Council erupted in laughter. Commander Zisk wiped tears from his eyes. "Gunpowder? My ancestors used that 5,000 years ago before they discovered plasma technology. Their ships are slow and clumsy," added Commander Reth. "Our fastest scout vessels can outrun their best warships. They won't even see us coming." Admiral Vextar pulled up more data. "Intelligence reports show they have no unified military command. Each world governs itself. Some colonies have fewer than 10 million inhabitants. They're scattered, weak, and divided." In the corner of the room, General Zephin sat quietly. His gray skin looked weathered compared to the younger Zerathi officers. As the only non-Zerathi in the High Command, he had earned his position through decades of successful campaigns. His people, the Altarians, had been conquered by the Empire 50 years ago. Now he served as their most trusted military strategist. "What do you think, General?" Admiral Vextar asked. "You've conquered primitive worlds before." General Zephon looked up slowly. His pale eyes moved across the holographic display. "Every species fights differently, Admiral. We should study their methods before attacking," Commander Thale scoffed. "Methods? What methods could they possibly have? They barely have space travel." "The Kalani barely had metal weapons when we first encountered them," General Zephon said quietly. "Yet they held 3 of our battalions for 6 months. That was different," Admiral Vextar waved dismissively. "The Kalani had natural advantages. Poisonous claws, thick hides, resistance to our weapons. These humans are soft. Pink skin, weak bones, no natural defenses." General Zephon nodded slowly but said nothing more. The Admiral continued his briefing. "Our plan is simple and efficient. We'll strike all 17 colonies simultaneously. 3 fleets, coordinated attacks, overwhelming force. The humans won't have time to organize any resistance." "How long do you estimate the campaign will take?" asked Commander Zisk. 3 days maximum," Admiral Vextar replied confidently. "Day 1, we destroy their orbital defenses. Day 2, we land ground forces and secure major cities. Day 3, we accept their surrender and begin resource extraction." The room buzzed with approval. This would be the easiest conquest in recent memory. The Empire needed new worlds, new resources, and new slaves. The human colonies offered all 3 with minimal risk. "Their technology is centuries behind ours," Commander Thale noted, reviewing his tablet. "They still use fossil fuels on some worlds. Their energy weapons are primitive and inefficient. Most of their military still relies on kinetic weapons." "Kinetic weapons?" Admiral Vextar chuckled. "Throwing metal at each other like cave dwellers. What about their numbers?" asked Commander Reth. 17 worlds could have substantial populations." "Irrelevant," the Admiral replied. "Raw numbers mean nothing against superior technology. One of our plasma cannons can level a city block. Our personal shields can stop their primitive bullets. Our soldiers could walk through their armies untouched." General Zephon shifted in his seat. "Admiral, if I may ask, what do we know about human military history?" "What's to know?" Admiral Vextar shrugged. "They fought each other with sticks and stones until recently. Some records show they had large wars on their homeworld. But that just proves they're violent and disorganized. Violent can be dangerous," General Zephon observed. "Not when channeled poorly," Commander Thale interjected. "Our analysts reviewed their historical conflicts. Crude tactics, massive casualties, inefficient use of resources. They throw lives away for no strategic gain." Admiral Vextar nodded. "Exactly. They're wasteful and emotional. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. This makes them predictable and weak." The hologram shifted to show human colony layouts. Each world appeared lightly defended. with small orbital stations and minimal military presence. The colonies focused on mining, agriculture, and trade rather than warfare. "Look at this," Admiral Vextar pointed to the display. "No fortress worlds, no military strongholds. They build their colonies around commerce and industry. They're merchants, not warriors." "Easy targets," agreed Commander Zisk. "We can capture their infrastructure intact and put it to better use." "The Emperor will be pleased." Admiral Vextar smiled. 17 new worlds added to the Empire with minimal cost. "Our casualties should be negligible." Commander Reth pulled up fleet assignments. "Sir, do we really need 3 full fleets for this operation? It seems like overkill." "Better to be certain," the Admiral replied. "Besides, we want to make an impression. When word spreads that the Empire crushed 17 human worlds in 3 days, other species will surrender without fighting." "A show of force," nodded Commander Thale. "Demonstrate our power and save lives in future conquests." General Zephon stood up slowly. "Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to review more intelligence on human military capabilities." "By all means, General, but don't waste too much time on it. We launch in 72 hours. As the meeting continued, the Zarathi officers discussed logistics, supply lines, and victory celebrations. They talked about which worlds would make the best slave labor camps and which resources would be most valuable to extract first. General Zephon listened quietly, his mind working through possibilities the others hadn't considered. He had conquered many worlds for the Empire, and each one taught him something new about warfare and survival. The young officers saw only technology differences and assumed easy victory. But the general had learned that desperate creatures could be far more dangerous than confident ones. The meeting ended with assignments distributed and timeline confirmed. The 3 fleets would depart in 72 hours and arrive in human space simultaneously. Admiral Vextar expected to be back on the capital world within 2 weeks, celebrating another successful expansion of Zarathi territory. As the officers filed out of the war room, General Zephon remained seated, staring at the holographic display of human space. Something bothered him about this campaign, but he couldn't identify what. Perhaps it was the confidence of the other officers, or perhaps it was his own experience with underestimated enemies. Either way, he decided to spend the next 3 days studying everything the Empire knew about humans. If Admiral Vextar was right, the research would be unnecessary. But if the Admiral was wrong, that research might save thousands of Zarathi lives. The general had learned long ago that preparation was the difference between victory and catastrophe. General Zephon spent the next day buried in intelligence files. His private quarters aboard the flagship were filled with holographic displays showing human history, culture, and military records. What he found made him increasingly uncomfortable. The humans weren't as primitive as the High Command believed. Yes, their technology lagged behind Zarathi capabilities, but their approach to warfare showed disturbing sophistication. They had fought wars on every type of terrain their planet offered, in every climate using every available resource. More troubling were their casualty reports. In their largest conflicts, humans had sustained losses that would have broken most species' will to fight. Yet they continued fighting. Some wars lasted years, even decades. The numbers were staggering. General Zephon rubbed his tired eyes and made a decision. He activated his communication device and requested an audience with Admiral Vextar. The response came quickly. The Admiral would see him in the war room in 1 hour. When General Zephon arrived, Admiral Vextar was alone, reviewing fleet positions on the main display. The massive chamber felt empty without the other officers present. "General," the Admiral greeted him without turning around, "I hope you're not having second thoughts about our campaign." "Not second thoughts, sir. Concerns." Admiral Vextar finally turned to face him. "Concerns about fighting humans?" "General, with respect, you've conquered species far more advanced than these primitives." "That's exactly what worries me." "Admiral." General Zephon moved to the holographic display and began manipulating the controls. "May I show you something?" "Of course." The display changed to show military statistics from various Imperial conquests. The colony possessed natural weapons and thick armor plating. They were fierce fighters, but they fought in predictable patterns. Their military doctrine was based on honor and direct confrontation. Admiral Vextar nodded. "Yes, and we defeated them by adapting to their tactics." The Morgathi had advanced energy shields and gravity weapons. General Zephon continued. They fought from prepared positions and used superior technology to their advantage. But they followed established military protocols. Where are you going with this, General? General Zephon changed the display to show human military history. The humans are different, Admiral. They don't follow established patterns. Look at this. The hologram showed human wars from their history. Massive battles with millions of casualties, cities reduced to rubble, entire populations displaced or destroyed. They've never fought a species-wide war, Admiral Vextar observed. These are just conflicts between different groups of humans. Exactly, General Zephon replied. They fought these wars against themselves. Look at the casualty numbers, Admiral. In one conflict, they lost over 70 million people. In another, over 20 million died in camps designed specifically for killing. Admiral Vextar shifted uncomfortably. What does this have to do with our campaign? It shows what they're capable of, sir. These aren't just primitive beings throwing spears at each other. They've developed warfare into a science. They study it, perfect it, and most importantly, they remember it. General Zephon pulled up more data. Look at their military academies, Admiral. They teach the history of every major conflict in human history. Their officers study battles that happened thousands of years ago and apply those lessons to modern warfare. Ancient history won't help them against plasma weapons and energy shields. Perhaps not directly, General Zephon agreed. But look at how they adapt. The display changed to show human technological development during their wars. During their most recent large-scale conflict, they went from primitive aircraft to jet-powered fighters in 6 years. They developed atomic weapons in 4 years. When pressed, they innovate rapidly. Admiral Vextar was beginning to look less confident. That was internal development, General. They won't have years to adapt to our technology, won't they? General Zephon changed the display again. Admiral, I've been monitoring their communications for the past day. They know we're coming. Impossible. Our intelligence networks are secure. Not from us, sir. From other sources. The humans have been in contact with several species in this sector. They trade with the Centaurans, maintain diplomatic relations with the Rigel Federation, and have mutual defense agreements with 3 smaller systems. Admiral Vextar frowned. Our intelligence didn't mention any of this, because we assumed they were too primitive to matter. But while we've been planning this campaign, they've been preparing for it. General Zephon pulled up intercepted human transmissions. These are communications between human colonies from the past month, Admiral. They're not panicking about an imperial invasion. They're organizing. The Admiral read the translations carefully. Military units moving between worlds. Resource stockpiles being consolidated. Civilian populations relocating to prepared positions. They're acting like they expected this, Admiral Vextar muttered. Because they did, sir. The humans have been studying imperial expansion patterns for decades. They know how we operate, what our standard tactics are, and how long our typical campaigns last. General Zephon changed the display to show human colony layouts. Look at these structures, Admiral. When I first saw them, I thought they were poorly designed for defense. But now I realize they're not designed for defense at all. What do you mean? They're designed for guerrilla warfare, sir. Every colony has underground tunnels, hidden supply caches, and multiple escape routes. Their cities can be evacuated quickly, but their infrastructure can also be destroyed quickly to deny it to invaders. Admiral Vextar studied the layouts more carefully. What had looked like poor planning now revealed itself as deliberate design. The humans had built their colonies to be abandoned if necessary, but also to be turned into traps for occupying forces. Admiral, there's something else. General Zephon's voice grew quieter. I've been analyzing their cultural transmissions. Music, literature, entertainment broadcasts. Do you know what theme appears in almost all of it? What? Resistance against overwhelming odds. Stories about small groups defeating larger forces through determination and sacrifice. They celebrate military defeats that caused massive casualties to their enemies. They have songs about fighting to the last person. Admiral Vextar was silent for several minutes studying the data. Finally, he spoke. What are you recommending, General? Caution, sir. These aren't the primitive beings our intelligence reports described. They're a species that has perfected warfare through constant practice. They've been fighting each other for thousands of years, and now they're preparing to fight us. You think they can actually resist our forces? General Zephon chose his words carefully. I think they'll try, Admiral. And when desperate creatures with nothing to lose decide to fight, They become very dangerous indeed. The Admiral turned back to the display showing Imperial fleet positions. 3 massive fleets, hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. General, even if everything you've said is true, we still have overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. Our weapons can destroy their ships from distances they can't even detect us. Our shields can stop anything they can throw at us. Yes, sir. But what if they don't fight the way we expect? What if they don't try to match our technology, but instead use tactics we haven't prepared for? Admiral Vextar was quiet for a long time. Outside the war room's massive windows, stars wheeled slowly past as the flagship maintained course toward human space. General, I appreciate your concerns, but we cannot call off this campaign based on speculation. The Emperor expects results and the Empire needs those resources. I understand, sir. I'm not suggesting we cancel the operation. I'm suggesting we modify our approach. How? More reconnaissance, better intelligence, longer timeline, and most importantly, sir, we should be prepared for tactics we haven't seen before. Admiral Vextar nodded slowly. Very well, General. I'll consider your recommendations. But the fleet continues on schedule. As General Zephon left the war room, he felt no satisfaction in having voiced his concerns. The Admiral had listened, but would he truly understand? The General had seen too many campaigns where overconfidence led to disaster. The humans were preparing for war. The question was whether the Imperial forces were preparing for the right kind of war. The next morning, Admiral Vextar found himself unable to focus on routine fleet operations. General Zephon's warnings echoed in his mind. Despite his public confidence, the Admiral decided to review the human intelligence files himself. What he found was disturbing. By afternoon, he had summoned General Zephon back to the war room. This time, the Admiral's demeanor was different. Less confident, more concerned. General, I've been reading the human historical records. Tell me about their wars. General Zephon activated the holographic display. Which wars, Admiral? They've fought constantly for thousands of years. Start with the largest ones. The display showed massive battles from human history. Their great wars involved entire continents, Admiral. Millions of soldiers, thousands of machines, battles that lasted months. But what should concern us most is how they fought. Admiral Vextar studied the images. Trenches stretching for hundreds of miles. Cities reduced to rubble. Massive machines designed solely for destruction. They developed chemical weapons, General Zephon continued. Gases that dissolved lungs, burned skin, caused blindness. When those were banned, they invented biological weapons, diseases designed to kill. Barbaric, the Admiral muttered. Perhaps, but effective. They didn't just fight to win territory, Admiral. They fought to completely destroy their enemy's ability to make war. The display changed to show human manufacturing during wartime. Look at this, sir. During one conflict, they converted their entire industrial capacity to weapon production. Factories that made tools began making guns. Plants that produced food started making explosives. Their entire society transformed for war. Admiral Vextar was quiet, studying the numbers. The scale of human industrial mobilization was staggering. And here's what truly concerns me, General Zephon said. They learned from every conflict. Each war taught them new tactics, new weapons, new ways to kill efficiently. The hologram showed the progression of human warfare. From simple metal weapons to complex machines, from individual combat to massive coordinated campaigns. They developed something they call combined arms tactics, General Zephon explained. Infantry, armor, artillery, and air support working together. No single unit operates alone. Everything supports everything else. Our forces use similar coordination, Admiral Vextar noted. Yes, but we learned it from studying dozens of species over centuries. The humans developed it themselves through trial and error, and they perfected it through constant warfare. The display showed human military academies and training facilities. They don't just train soldiers, Admiral. They train thinkers. Their officers study philosophy, history, psychology, and engineering. They understand that war is more than just shooting enemies. Admiral Vextar leaned forward. What do you mean? They understand the mental aspects of warfare. Morale, fear, determination, sacrifice. They know how to break an enemy's will to fight, and they know how to maintain their own will when everything seems hopeless. General Zephon changed the display to show human resistance movements. Throughout their history, whenever they've been conquered or occupied, they've continued fighting. Not just armies, Admiral, civilians, men, women, even children. The images were disturbing. Entire populations organized to resist occupying forces. Sabotage, assassination, guerrilla warfare conducted by people who should have been non-combatants. They call it total war, General Zephon said quietly. When survival is at stake, every human becomes a soldier. Admiral Vextar studied the data. But surely they can't all fight effectively. Children, elderly, civilians without training. That's what makes them dangerous, sir. They don't need formal military training to be deadly. A child with an explosive device is as dangerous as a trained soldier. An elderly person with knowledge of local terrain can guide entire armies. The general pulled up more disturbing information. Look at their occupied territories, Admiral. When humans are conquered, the occupation never ends. The resistance continues for decades, sometimes centuries. Centuries? Yes, sir. They have something they call cultural memory. Stories, songs, traditions that keep resistance alive across generations. Children grow up hearing stories of freedom and learning to hate their occupiers. Admiral Vextar was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. So even if we defeat their military forces, we'll face civilian resistance for decades, General Zephon confirmed. Every human colony will become a constant drain on Imperial resources. We'll need permanent garrisons, constant surveillance, endless security operations. The display changed to show human technological adaptation. But here's the worst part, Admiral. They adapt enemy technology faster than any species I've studied. What do you mean? During their wars, they captured enemy weapons and improved them within months, sometimes weeks. They don't just copy technology, sir. They analyze it, understand it, and make it better. Admiral Vextar studied examples of human technological improvements. In every case, captured weapons were quickly reversed engineered and enhanced. They have something they call battlefield innovation, General Zephon continued. Soldiers modify their equipment based on combat experience. Engineers design new weapons based on field reports. Their entire military structure is built for rapid adaptation. But that's impossible without advanced manufacturing capabilities. Not for humans, sir. They're masters of improvisation. They can make weapons from farming equipment, explosives from fertilizer, communication devices from scrap metal. The general showed examples of human ingenuity during their wars, simple materials transformed into deadly weapons, basic tools converted for military use. Admiral, there's something else about human warfare that disturbs me, General Zephon said. They study their enemies obsessively. All militaries study their enemies. Not like humans, sir. They analyze psychology, culture, history, and biology. They look for weaknesses most species would never consider. The display showed human intelligence operations. They don't just gather military information. They study how their enemies think, what they fear, how they make decisions. Then they exploit that knowledge. Admiral Vextar was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he asked, General, what do they know about us? More than we know about them, sir. They've been monitoring Imperial expansion for decades. They have detailed analyses of our tactics, our technology, and our weaknesses. Weaknesses? General Zephon nodded grimly. Zarathi forces rely heavily on technology and established doctrine. We're excellent at conventional warfare against conventional enemies, but we struggle against unconventional tactics. Give me an example. The Vegan Uprising, sir. A small colony world that should have been pacified in days. Instead, the occupation lasted 3 years because the rebels used guerrilla tactics we weren't prepared for. Admiral Vextar remembered that campaign. It had been an embarrassing drain on Imperial resources. The humans have studied that campaign, Admiral. They know exactly how the rebels succeeded and how they eventually failed. They won't make the same mistakes. The Admiral stood and walked to the large windows overlooking space. His fleet was massive and powerful, but for the first time he wondered if it would be enough. General, are you saying we can't defeat the humans? I'm saying victory will cost far more than the High Command expects, sir. And even after military victory, we may face decades of costly occupation against an enemy that never truly surrenders. Admiral Vextar continued staring out at the stars. Somewhere ahead lay human space and 17 worlds that were supposed to be easy conquests. Now he wasn't sure they would be conquests at all. On the third day before the planned attack, Admiral Vextar called an emergency meeting of the High Command. The war room filled with the same officers who had been so confident days earlier, but the Admiral's mood had changed dramatically. Gentlemen, Admiral Vextar began, General Zephon has brought some concerning intelligence to my attention. General, please share what you've discovered. General Zephon stood and activated the holographic display. The confident chatter that usually filled these meetings was notably absent. Officers, we need to discuss human military capabilities in more detail. What I'm about to show you may change our approach to this campaign. Commander Thale shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we've already reviewed human technology. They're centuries behind us. Technology isn't everything, Commander, General Zephon replied. Let me show you how humans fight when they're desperate. The display showed human siege warfare. Cities surrounded for months. Population surviving on minimal supplies, yet continuing to resist. This is the siege of Leningrad from their Great War, General Zephon explained. The city was surrounded for 900 days. Over 1 million civilians died from starvation and bombardment. But they never surrendered. The officers studied the images in uncomfortable silence. The scale of human suffering was beyond what most species would endure. 900 days? Commander Reth asked quietly. Nearly 3 years, sir. And this wasn't their military holding the city. This was civilians. Men, women, children, elderly people. They ate anything they could find to survive. Leather, paper, even wallpaper paste. But they kept fighting. General Zephon changed the display. This is the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. A few hundred humans with primitive weapons held off a modern army for 28 days. They knew they couldn't win, but they fought anyway. Why? Asked Commander Zisk. Because they preferred to die fighting rather than live as slaves, General Zephon answered. This is the human mentality we'll be facing. The display showed more examples of human resistance. In every case, outnumbered and outgunned humans had continued fighting long after any rational assessment would have suggested surrender. But surely these are exceptional cases, Commander Thale protested. Not all humans would fight so desperately. Actually, Commander, these examples are typical of human behavior when they feel their survival is threatened. Let me show you their doctrine of scorched earth warfare. The new images were even more disturbing. Entire regions destroyed by retreating armies. Cities burned, crops destroyed, infrastructure demolished. When facing defeat, humans destroy everything of value rather than let it fall into enemy hands, General Zephon explained. Their own cities, their own resources, their own people's livelihoods, all sacrificed to deny advantage to invaders. Admiral Vextar leaned forward. You're saying they would destroy their own colonies rather than let us capture them? Yes, sir. And they've had 200 years to prepare for this possibility. Every human colony has contingency plans for complete destruction of valuable resources. Commander Reth studied the holographic data. But that would be suicide. They'd have nothing left. Humans have a saying, Commander. Better to die free than live as slaves. They mean it literally. General Zephon brought up new intelligence. But there's worse news, officers. The humans aren't just preparing to resist, they're preparing to counterattack. Impossible, scoffed Commander Thale. Their ships are too slow, their weapons too primitive. That was true 6 months ago, Commander. It's not true now. The display showed recent human technological developments. Admiral Vexter felt his confidence crumbling as he recognized familiar designs. These are our shield generators, he said slowly. Modified and improved. Yes, sir. General Zephon confirmed. The humans have been capturing Imperial technology from various sources. Trade contacts, salvaged equipment, even some defectors from conquered species. The room fell silent as the officers realized the implications. How much of our technology do they have? Admiral Vextar asked. Enough to be dangerous, sir. They've reverse-engineered our plasma weapons, energy shields, and faster-than-light drives. But they haven't just copied our technology. They've improved it. General Zephon highlighted specific modifications. Human engineers have increased plasma weapon efficiency by 15%. Their shield generators are 20% more powerful than our standard models, and they've solved several problems with our drive systems that our own engineers haven't addressed. Commander Zisk looked pale. How is that possible? They've only had our technology for months. Because they approach problems differently than we do, sir. Zerathi engineering follows traditional methods passed down through generations. Human engineering is based on constant experimentation and innovation. The display showed human research facilities working around the clock. They don't just have a few scientists studying our technology. They have thousands of engineers all working on different aspects of the same problems. And there's something else, General Zephon continued. The humans have been sharing technology with their allies. What allies? Admiral Vextar demanded. More than we realized, sir. The Centauran Republic has been secretly providing humans with advanced materials. The Rigel Federation has shared sensor technology. 3 minor systems have formal defense agreements with human colonies. The implications hit the officers like a physical blow. This wasn't going to be a simple conquest of isolated human worlds. This would be a war against a growing alliance. Why didn't our intelligence networks detect this? Commander Thale asked. Because we weren't looking for it, sir. We assumed humans were too primitive to form meaningful alliances. We were wrong. General Zephan pulled up communication intercepts. The humans have been coordinating with their allies for months. If we attack human space, we may find ourselves fighting multiple species simultaneously. Admiral Vextar studied the data with growing alarm. What are their combined military capabilities? Significant, sir. Not enough to match our 3 fleets in direct combat, but more than enough to make conquest extremely costly. And they won't fight us directly, General Zephan continued. Human military doctrine emphasizes mobility and guerrilla tactics. They'll strike our supply lines, target our communication networks, and attack our weakest units. The display showed human tactical manuals. They've studied every Imperial campaign for the past 50 years. They know our standard operating procedures, our preferred tactics, and our response patterns. Commander Reth looked disturbed. They've been planning this for decades? Yes, sir. While we saw them as a future conquest target, they saw us as an inevitable threat and prepared accordingly. General Zephan brought up the most disturbing intelligence yet. Officers, the humans have developed something they call asymmetric warfare. Instead of trying to match our military strength, they plan to attack our weaknesses. What weaknesses? Admiral Vextar asked. Our extended supply lines, sir. Our reliance on centralized command structures. Our preference for conventional battles against conventional enemies. The display showed human battle plans, not for defending their worlds, but for attacking Imperial territory. They're planning to invade us? Commander Thale asked in disbelief. Not exactly, sir. They're planning to make conquest so expensive that we'll eventually withdraw. And if that doesn't work, they're prepared to take the war to Imperial space. The room fell into stunned silence. These weren't the primitive, defenseless colonists they had expected to face. These were sophisticated enemies who had spent decades preparing for war against the Empire. Admiral Vextar stood slowly. General, what would you estimate our casualties will be if we proceed with the original plan? General Zephan was quiet for several moments. Unacceptable levels, sir. We might win, but the cost would be catastrophic. The Admiral looked around the room at his officers. Their earlier confidence had been replaced by uncertainty and fear. Gentlemen, we need to reconsider our approach. The final briefing took place just hours before the fleet was scheduled to enter human space. Admiral Vextar had called together not just the High Command, but also the ship captains and senior officers who would be leading the assault. The war room was packed with military personnel, all waiting to hear their final orders. General Zephan stood at the holographic display, but this time his expression was grim. Admiral Vextar had given him permission to share everything he had discovered about human preparations for war. Officers, General Zephan began, what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about this campaign. The room was completely silent. Even the usual background hum of ship systems seemed muted. The humans know we're coming. They've known for months. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled officers, but General Zephan continued. More than that, they've been preparing specifically for us, not for some theoretical alien invasion, but for the Zerathi Empire using standard Imperial tactics. He activated the display, showing intercepted human communications from the past week. These are messages between human military commanders, transmitted just yesterday. They're not discussing evacuation plans or surrender negotiations. They're coordinating final preparations for what they call Operation Homestead. Admiral Vextar read the translations aloud. Final equipment checks complete. All kill zones prepared. Civilian populations secured in prepared positions. Enemy fleet approaching on schedule. On schedule? Asked Captain Corix. Yes, sir. They predicted our arrival time within 6 hours. They know our fleet size, our ship classifications, and our probable attack vectors. General Zephan changed the display to show human defensive preparations. Officers, every single human colony has been transformed into a fortress. What we thought were poorly defended civilian settlements are actually carefully designed defensive positions. The images were shocking: underground bunker networks, hidden weapon emplacements, camouflage supply depots. The human colonies looked nothing like the intelligence reports had suggested. "How long have they been preparing?" asked Captain Veth. "Since they first detected Imperial scout ships in this sector, sir." "Approximately 18 months of continuous preparation." 18 months? Admiral Vextar stood up abruptly. "Our scouts were supposed to be undetectable. Not to human sensor networks, sir. They've developed detection methods we weren't aware of. And once they confirmed Imperial interest in their territory, they began the largest military mobilization in human history." General Zephon pulled up population statistics that made several officers gasp. "Every human colony has activated universal conscription. Every civilian between the ages of 16 and 60 has received military training. Their total mobilized forces number over 40 million people." 40 million? Captain Morix looked stunned. "Our intelligence estimated their total military at fewer than 2 million. That was their peacetime military, sir. What we're facing now is their entire population organized for war." The display showed training facilities on every human world, massive camps where civilians were learning combat skills, weapons handling, and guerrilla tactics, but they can't all be effective soldiers, protested Captain Corix. "Civilian conscripts with minimal training can't match professional military units." "You're right, sir. In conventional warfare, they couldn't. But the humans aren't planning conventional warfare." General Zephon showed human tactical manuals that had been intercepted and translated. They call it fourth-generation warfare. Instead of trying to defeat our military units directly, they plan to make occupation impossible through constant harassment, sabotage, and psychological warfare. The tactical documents were disturbing. Plans for assassinating occupation forces, destroying infrastructure, and conducting terrorism campaigns against Imperial personnel. Every human civilian has been given a specific role in resistance operations, General Zephon continued. "Children will serve as messengers and scouts. Elderly humans will provide intelligence and support. Adults will conduct active sabotage and combat operations." Admiral Vextar studied the documents with growing alarm. "They're planning to turn their entire society into a resistance network." "Yes, sir. And they've had 18 months to prepare hiding places, supply caches, and communication networks. We won't just be fighting human military units, we'll be fighting their entire civilization." Captain Veth raised a troubling question. "What about our technological advantages? Our shields and plasma weapons should still give us a decisive edge." General Zephon's response sent chills through the room. "Sir, the humans have been testing captured Imperial equipment for months. They know exactly how our weapons work, and they've developed countermeasures." The display showed human weapons testing: Imperial plasma rifles being fired at various targets, energy shields being subjected to different types of attacks. They've discovered that our personal shields have a specific frequency vulnerability. They've modified their kinetic weapons to exploit that weakness. Several officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "But more importantly, sir, they've developed tactics specifically designed to neutralize our advantages." General Zephon showed human training, exercises that made the Imperial officers visibly nervous. They practice fighting enemies with superior technology. Their doctrine is based on getting close enough that technological advantages become irrelevant. "Close combat," Admiral Vextar said quietly. "Yes, sir. Humans excel at close-quarters fighting, and they've designed their defensive positions to force close combat situations where our technological superiority won't help us." The display changed to show the most disturbing intelligence yet: officers. There's something else. The humans have developed biological weapons specifically designed to target Zerathi physiology. The room erupted in shocked exclamations, but General Zephon held up a hand for silence. "They've been studying our biology for decades through diplomatic contacts, trade relationships, and captured genetic samples. They know our weaknesses." Admiral Vextar felt sick. "What kind of biological weapons?" "Airborne pathogens that target our respiratory system, sir. Chemical agents that disrupt our nervous system. And most disturbing of all, they've developed ways to weaponize diseases that are harmless to humans, but deadly to us." Captain Corix looked pale.
"They would use such weapons?"
"Sir, when humans believe their survival is at stake, they use every available weapon. Their history shows they've used biological and chemical weapons against their own species. They won't hesitate to use them against us. General Zephon brought up the final piece of intelligence that would seal the fate of the Imperial invasion. And officers, there's one last thing you need to know. The humans aren't planning to just defend their colonies. He activated a display that showed the location of every Imperial base, supply depot, and civilian installation within 100 light-years of human space. They're planning to attack Imperial territory. While we're trying to conquer their worlds, they'll be striking ours. The room fell into stunned silence as the officers realized the full scope of what they were facing. How do they know where our bases are? Admiral Vextar demanded. Decades of intelligence gathering, sir. Trade contacts, diplomatic missions, and infiltration operations. They know more about Imperial territory than most of our own officers do. Admiral Vextar looked around the room at his officers. Their faces showed a mixture of fear, anger, and disbelief. General, what are you recommending? General Zephon stood quietly for several moments before answering. Sir, I recommend we withdraw from human space immediately. The suggestion caused an uproar among the officers, but Admiral Vexitar silenced them with a gesture. Explain. Sir, if we proceed with this invasion, we'll be fighting a war we're not prepared for against an enemy that's been preparing specifically for us. Our casualties will be catastrophic, and even if we achieve military victory, we'll face decades of costly occupation. General Zephon paused, then continued with the most sobering assessment yet. And Admiral, while we're tied down fighting humans, other species in the region will see our weakness. The Empire could face rebellions across multiple sectors. Admiral Vextar was quiet for several minutes, considering everything he had learned. Finally, he activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Vextar. Halt current approach and maintain position at the edge of human space. He turned to face the assembled officers. We need to report back to Imperial Command and request new orders. This campaign requires a complete reassessment. As the meeting dispersed, General Zephon remained behind with the Admiral. Sir, there's one more thing the humans want us to know. Admiral Vextar looked up tiredly. What now? General Zephon activated a final display showing a message that had been transmitted directly to the Imperial fleet. The message was simple, written in perfect Zerathi script. Welcome to human space. We've been expecting you. We hope you'll consider the diplomatic solution we've prepared. But if you insist on war, we're ready for that too. The choice is yours. Admiral Vextar stared at the message for a long time. For the first time in Imperial history, a primitive species was offering negotiations from a position of strength. The great Zerathi Empire, for the first time in its expansion, was facing an enemy that might actually defeat them.